All right, class, we're in section 2.3, graphs for quantitative data. This one's the second example here dealing with histograms. In this case, what I want to emphasize is that we're going to target for ungrouped data. And primarily, that's because I'm going to point this out probably again. You can see here for the classes, we don't have a lower or upper class limit. And when that happens, we just call it for ungrouped here. So there's no groups, they're just single values, perfect for discrete, and we'll go more in detail about that. So let me go back over here to the problem. It says the following data numbers or books are bought by 50 part-time bought by 50 part-time college students at ABC College. The number of books is discrete, and since the books are counted and discrete go hand in hand with one another. All right, construct a histogram. And so it's being a little vague here. That's okay. When it says just the word there, they really mean to add the word frequency. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll produce a frequency histogram. Unlike the last problem that we did, that was for a relative frequency histogram. There's no reason for this, so we could find either one, we could find a relative or frequency histogram. It really doesn't matter, again, that we're dealing with ungrouped data. So I don't want that to get confused. Grouped and ungrouped data, you can make a frequency or relative frequency histogram. All that we need to provide here is that we have this thing, a frequency distribution. Without that, we can't get started. This works out perfect for ungrouped data, and I just want to point that out here, is that because not only are these whole numbers, so and I'll make a label here for grouped. Grouped frequency distribution. But the other distinction is whole numbers and that there's a lot of repeats. And when that happens, in this case here, naturally we go from a distinctive number down to another one. These don't carry on forever. There's a distinct pattern here, and so looking at number of books, perhaps looking at number of parking tickets, how many cigarettes you smoke per day, things of that nature fit perfect for ungrouped data. So in the situation here, we want to make the distinction that ungrouped implies, or vice versa, no boundaries. So we have no class boundaries. Class boundaries only make sense when you have groups for each class. We don't have that, so we won't go through all that mess. Therefore, in that respect, we can go ahead and get started by producing the histogram. So let me go ahead and do that and make our beautiful L shape here, with here the y-axis representing the frequency, and the x-axis is that for the topic here, quantitative data. So I'm going to label the x-axis here with the number of books. So the number of books bought. Okay, once that is achieved, then we've got, I'm going to label that. The first one there is 1. And so I don't want to place these numbers between, but kind of in the center. These would label the middle of each bar we're going to produce here. Let me go ahead and bring this down and slide this over just a little bit here. because I need more room probably for my y-axis. So let me just evenly space this out. So again, these numbers are going to label the center of each bar, not go between. Class boundaries go between each bar. For the y-axis, we'll notice here that, like the other example, peaked at 40%. For the frequency, this is going to peak at 16. So I can naturally go and count by 2s, or I can count by 5s, as long as you have an even scale for your y-axis. So if I went ahead and did maybe 10 here and 20, 5, 15, then I go a little bit above that 15 to make the peak there at 16. So I'll go 20, 15, counting backwards 10, and then 5. Okay, that'll produce that for my scale for my graph. Let me go ahead and graph these. Now the first one is for one book, we're looking at 11, a frequency 11. There were 11 responses that said they only bought one book. Okay, so then go ahead and do that. Pretty easy here. Just come right across the y-axis. You can attach to it, because each one of those other problems I did in the last example, I just veered off the right side of each one of those bars. So here to emphasize that on this, that 1 is in the center, labeling the middle of that bar, kind of like a midpoint. Next one has a frequency of 10, again coming off the right side of that bar. Then drop down. 2 labels the center of that one. Next frequency is 16. We're going to have to come up a little bit, just above the 15 there. Not too perfect, that's okay. There's a label there for 3. Next one has a frequency of 6, so a little bit above the 5 there. Again, each one of these coming off the right side of those bars. Next one is 5. So a little bit below here. And then the last one is at a 2. Alright, there we go. So let me just make sure that each one of these numbers are in the center of each bar, labeling the middle of it. We could go ahead here and color code these if you want, like we did the last problem. But basically that is it for grouped frequency distribution histogram and this is for ungrouped data here. Let me go ahead and color code this in, make it look all nice. Just kind of adding here things I need to think about as I kind of wrap up. Nothing much comes to mind. These are very easy to make. I think some of the common things that students do when they see, it's just not to know to put the number in the center of each bar, forgetting that everything for histogram just needs to be, have those class boundaries. So I want you to know the distinction between grouped and ungrouped for the frequency distribution. So with groups there, make the class boundaries. If there's no groups, just do this, what I'm doing here. Put in the center of each bar. That students tend to do pretty well on this. And of course, remember, the word histogram implies that the bars touch. I always get on the test example that they will not have the bars touch. It's very crucial that you do make sure these bars are touching, because it tells the behavior of the graph and also makes that distinction about what's happening with the population as well by the shape of the histogram. So we'll go over those later when we get to section 2.4 and then also 2.5. Okay, let me wrap this up here. And then one more color. Lime green looks good. Now we'll do it. So there's our frequency histogram for ungrouped data there, and that is it. And I think I labeled their books. We're great here. Can move on to the next video there. All right, that'll do it. This is section 2.3 on quantitative data.